All right, good morning, everybody. I have 8:30. We'll go ahead and start our reconnaissance security class. So a couple things to set the stage for today's class is we're going to have to go in our Wayback Machine all the way back to 401, 402, 403, 404, the offense and the defense. The reconnaissance security class will absolutely get us into the discussion about understand, visualize, describe. It will get us into the critical steps of MDMP. Okay? It is also, anytime we're teaching cavalry ops, it is the most wonderful time of the year. Okay? It is the best class we have. I don't know, did anyone happen to pay any attention to the lesson author of the class? Interesting. Huh. It's a pretty strong class, I would say. I would argue it could be the best class here. A lot of people are saying it, that this is the best class in the curriculum. I mean, they said some good things about the space class, but this one, I get a lot of attention for. So what we're going to do here is, before we show this video, let's reflect back to Buford and his arrival at Gettysburg, okay? And we used that example to discuss the understand, visualize, describe. We're going to just kind of apply that to the fundamentals of reconnaissance. And then we're going to look at Jeb Stuart on the Confederate side in this video. Just remember, the fundamental purpose of reconnaissance security is to set conditions for successful operations. It is always an enabling operation. So we're going to hit go on this video. Okay, so as we moved through this video, let's first get our memory back of Buford. How did Buford do at Gettysburg? Well, let's throw a splash in, something from the reading maybe. Maybe open up that slide on the fundamentals of reconnaissance. What did Buford do well? That's cool, yeah, we want to do that. What else? Oh man, you could just run the whole list, right? All right, pretty good for an intel guy, but masquerading as an intel guy. All right, so now we see Stuart, right? Has anyone been on the receiving end of a mad general? Yeah, it's okay. Generals do get fussy. They get fussy from time to time, and sometimes you're on the receiving end of it. But as we look at what General Lee was saying to Stuart, what did Stuart fail to do? Okay, so when you provide a commander freedom of maneuver, is that, yeah. So in the context of recon and security, when we talk about recon, we say freedom of maneuver, and that is the freedom of that maneuver force, right? When we say time and space, that's for the protected force. So not time and space to make decisions for General Lee. So it was a reconnaissance and security operation, right? Where was he oriented, Stuart? It's in the narrative as well as in the stunning portrayal of Martin Sheen and whoever else the other.
He focused on logistics and the deep fight?
He was foraging, which could mean a lot of different things. But yes, he was out foraging. That is not oriented on a reconnaissance objective, right? And did Lee lay out what he felt like his guidance was? It's written there. Okay. So what we're going to go through today is recognize and appreciate the fundamental purpose of reconnaissance security operations, or what used to be cavalry formations, is number one. Look cool, right? They have the funny hats. They got the spurs. Maybe sometimes they're carrying a saber. I mean, who knows? But they have all the costumes in the regalia. The esprit de corps. They have the esprit de corps as well. So we're going to talk about the fundamental purpose of reconnaissance security, why this ties into the Army transformation, in our argument about drones, surveillance capabilities replacing the ground combat capability, okay? So we're going to reconcile that today. We're going to talk about the differences between recon and security. We're going to talk about the fundamentals of both, just as we pulled through the threads of the characteristics of the offense into our analysis and the characteristics of the defense into our analysis of those PEs. We'll do that again today, pulling through the fundamentals of reconnaissance and security. We're going to get into some of the technical things of how you give guidance on recon, commander's reconnaissance guidance or commander's security guidance. There's a technical aspect, and we're going to tie it back to our understand, visualize, describe, right? So the commander's unique role in driving the ops process. We're going to tie that in today as well. The enemy's coming back. They have not left Mojave Desert yet. We are still, though we've been doing this for 2 weeks, we have not made any headway. The 165th is still lurking over there, and elements of 715 are still over on the other pass there. We have made no headway with the enemy in 2 weeks in this classroom. They're still there. Every time I pick up a map, the enemy has not moved. So we're going to have to do better today on the enemy situation. So that's where we're at right now for today's classes. We're going to touch into this reconnaissance management, right? And you have probably heard in relation to targeting about queuing, mixing, redundancy. Okay? We're going to talk about what those terms mean and how they apply to reconnaissance operations and security operations. But those are different terms. And then we're going to get into some of the unique graphic control measures and tactical mission tasks that we would use in reconnaissance security operations. Okay? But the key part to understand is at the top of the chapter in 390 that covers reconnaissance security operations. This is an enabling operation. This is an enabling operation, right? And as you go to your doc mat here, there's a list, right? You see, I know I can count on you. He's keeping a clear eye, right? Keeping a clear eye, all right? So right there, the enabling operations. Part of the sequencing of this class is we would get the fundamentals, right? We'd understand the terrain, the environment, how the commander drives the ops process. We talk about the heavy lifts of offense, defense, and then we're going to tie this one in. We're going to tie it all together. How reconnaissance security operations connect, understand, visualize, describe, direct, lead, assess, IPO, how it connects that connective tissue with the decisions made in planning, as well as setting the main body up for success when it comes to the fighty bits. So this is where reconnaissance security fits as that enabling op. So it says in there it's enduring and essential, or kind of like two words that mean the same thing somewhere in the doctrine. All right, so it never stops, and it's done at every echelon, okay? So that's what we're going to run through today. And it's going to be finished with a PE. Okay, so this is what Buford did. He did everything right. He did everything right because we actually have it in the reading, right? FM 398 talks about this as a vignette. This vignette has been taught. All right, so I've been in the Army, what did I say, 6 years? So 6 years ago when I went to the career course, we were taught this as well. Now, there's a couple of things we want to take out of this and how we tie it back to the commander's activities. Okay? So, reconnaissance assets in reserve. We don't do that. That's bad form. Okay? This is where we talk about it. Orient on the reconnaissance objective. What are they actually going to find out when? What is it that the commander, what gap must we be closing for the commander? How are we setting conditions, shaping, enabling, whatever parlance you want? How are we meeting the purpose of successful operations of the main body? Okay? So that's where we're at with that. We know that Buford didn't do very well. He wasn't oriented on the force protected, right, which was Lee's army. So when we talk about that time, okay, provide time and maneuver space. Time and maneuver space orients to that higher headquarters, that they have the time and the space to make a decision and maneuver in response to a change in terrain. A river gets flooded, a bridge is out, something like that, or in response to an enemy change. So that's what we mean by the time and maneuver space. It's tied to the decision making of that commander. Okay. So we talked about how we're going to do that. How many types of reconnaissance operations are there? You have the magic of the computers in your hands. 5. What's our favorite?
Zone.
Why is zone our favorite? Huh?
Because zone encompasses a lot.
Because it encompasses a lot? Okay. What's the downside of a zone reconnaissance? It encompasses a lot, right? Like you got to do everything, right? It encompasses a lot, okay? So when we get into a more detailed discussion of the zone reconnaissance, we have to account for time in our MET-TCI analysis, how much time it takes to do a zone reconnaissance, and we have to account for the enemy, the interaction or relationship with the enemy, because it's clear the enemy in the zone. So big zone, a lot of enemy, you have to task organize to clear doctrinally within that zone. So maybe zones on it. What's another good one? Area reconnaissance, right? I just skipped to an area, and I have very detailed. Now, what am I looking for? What are the gaps? How are we actually articulating the gaps? How does the commander articulate the gaps that he wants the reconnaissance security formation? Well, we can graphically depict it with an NAI, but PIRs, right? And then when we put 2 of them together, what do we get? So what are the 2 we put together again? Well, which one? You're trailing off. I didn't hear you. Okay. So as we went through receipt of mission analysis, we started to get these gaps. These gaps in our understanding of the enemy or these gaps in the understanding of the environment. We're going to package them up. And then we're going to be, does anyone for bonus points know what we put that in for the execution for this formation to go out? Who said it? ANXL. ANXL is that old chestnut in the back of the base order, ANXL. That would be the execution document we would use. It has mission, the whole thing. And they would give it to the whatever formation is doing it. Okay, so we're going to close out the gaps on that. How many security operations are there?
4.
What's our favorite? Why a screen? It's the most cowardly of all security operations. Why a screen? I'm screening, boss. Why a screen?
Provides early warning.
But not fighting. Pretty cowardly, huh? Oh, God, they're coming! I mean, that's a cowardly approach. I mean, ideally we want to cover, right? But what's the limitation of a cover? Where does a cover run into problems? So it's a brigade headquarters, right?
With fires attached.
Yeah, has to be complete. It's I think it's a self-contained, right? So it's I don't know, dare I say, an ACR, which we don't have anymore, right? Okay, so the cover is the best. It provides the highest level of security, but requires the greatest amount of resources, right? Screen is just like they're coming. Some poor scout on a hill with binos and like, oh, they're in tanks. They're going to be there now. Okay. So, well, the screen. Okay. When we get into the deep dive on the screen, so to speak, we'll talk about how it is not static. It is still a combination of offensive and defensive actions to provide that early warning. Embedded in all of our discussion of security operations today is the tactical mission task of counter reconnaissance, which is offensive in nature. We're going to, go kill the enemy scouts. Okay, so we'll talk about that for recon and security. Okay, you guys will have to keep me honest on time today. I know I'm not supposed to look directly at the cameras because it will make me nervous, but you'll have to keep me honest with time today for our breaks, okay? Were you supposed to be on break right now, Derek? Did you say we need an hour break? All right, everybody take an hour, wait a beat, and then come back in. All right, reconnaissance security operations. So first thing we got to do is reconcile the doctrinal backbone of what is reconnaissance, what is security, and why do we put them together and we don't talk about them separately? It's reconnaissance and security. You can't do security without reconnaissance. You can't do reconnaissance without security, okay? If you look back, if you remember back as we were doing our offensive ops class or even with our defensive ops class, there was always some kind of security element associated with any main body, okay? So it is inculcated in all of our doctrine that there's security. When we're talking about reconnaissance security operations, what we're talking about is at echelon, okay? So do we have a divisional level reconnaissance security formation? Trained, organized, and equipped. There's a divisional cavalry? Where? No, it is, I don't think you're going to see that when you get back out to the line. There was some testing of it over the years to bring it back. Right now, does not appear to be coming back, okay? But no, we don't have dedicated reconnaissance security at echelon. Okay, IBCTs and strikers, when we went to our Army organization classes, part of what how they were restructured was the removal of a reconnaissance and security capability within those brigades. So that capability was removed from our IBCTs, or now our MBCTs have been at least reduced to a company size, and then it's been removed from the strikers, okay? So we have moved a lot of that capability out of the brigades, okay? And this applies back to our discussion about the deep fight, close fight, and who's owning what in that transition between those fights. Okay, so let's look at the definition. Okay, it's really pretty clear. What is reconnaissance oriented on? Yeah, it's written up there in red. Now you can go for hydrological changes or some other things with the reconnaissance, right? But it's oriented on the enemy, okay? And then security is oriented on what? Okay, so this can go towards, as we flash back to our stability ops, when we talked about those minimum essential tasks, right? We're consolidating gains, we're doing area security. Doctrinally, area security is described here in your readings last night. So it's oriented on the force protected, or as we said during stability ops, it could be the nuclear power plant or whatever it is. Okay, it's oriented on something friendly. Okay, blue. All right. So when do we start reconnaissance? When do we start? 1618 up to. I'm sorry. Would you like to share your podcast with the class? Michelle, please come up and you can have the rest of the class. Well, we can't let it go just because it was a simple mistake doesn't mean we can let it go. Were you hacked? That's okay. My phone, yeah, I probably have my ringer on right now. It's probably about to go. You know what we should do? Check this out. I want to be a hypocrite. Ring, 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 ring. Oh, yeah, everybody's like, whoa, maybe. You know what I do when you guys are down in the auditorium? I'm sitting up on the balcony and I'll start randomly calling students to see if their phones go off while they're down in Eisenhower. And then I see them grab their phone. I'm like, hey, put that phone down. You're not supposed to have it on right now. But from the balcony, right, it's dominant terrain. All right, so reconnaissance. When do we start reconnaissance? Enduring, right? When do we, so if it's always going, when do we stop reconnaissance? Never? Then they'd be tired, right? Huh? I mean, we're doing reconnaissance security ever. Okay, so what we want to talk through today is when we're going to overlay MDMP in the ops process, okay? So we're going to kind of neck it into where we're got a receipt of mission, and we're going to walk back through kind of MDMP. By warning order 2, right, we have completed what before warning order 2? We've definitely done 1, or we could skip 1 because we're just crazy enough to do it. So we do, what's step 2 of MA? Mission analysis. I just gave you the answer, good. All right, so we do mission analysis, and then we produce warning order 2. So warning order 2 can be an opportunity for initiation of reconnaissance, okay? So that may involve task order changes. It may involve some graphic control measures. It may involve a lot of different things, okay? So we'll go into depth on that one. So security, pretty straightforward, right? It's an inherent responsibility of every subordinate unit. But when we're discussing it in this context, it's about a larger organization, right? So a division, someone is securing something on behalf of the division commander. In the decision space or the time and maneuver space, a division needs to make a decision. That would be a security force. Your inherent security towards your subordinate unit is inherent, right? You're going to do that anyway. You're going to secure yourself, right? So remember, if we talked about it, what's the first thing we do when we come to a short halt or we've culminated or something? What's the first thing we do? No, what did you guys really say when the cameras weren't here? A rest plan was the first thing. What else did you say when the cameras weren't here? Yeah, eat. It was sleep, eat. What was the next one? Yeah, text somebody, get your phones turned back on, broadcasting at high power, omnidirectional. Yeah, get all those phones turned back on. Yeah. That's what you said you did when you stopped, right? Eat, sleep, and start texting. Okay. Now, imagine, now that the cameras are here, all of a sudden you're like, sure, security is the most important thing. We've got to get security up. We've got to establish command and control nodes. We've got priorities of work. That's what we do. Posers. Just, you said it when the cameras weren't here. Now. So security, again, as we're talking about it at echelon, all right? So I'm going to blast to the next slide here, and you'll see we're going to walk it through again, right? So these are doctrinal lifts that were in your reading, and then they've just been packaged for you here. Now this is kind of the narrative or the linkage between these. You can kind of scan through that. So the difference and the relationship between, so the doctrinal linkage between reconnaissance security is there on that line about cannot be divorced from. All right, so the difference is in a reconnaissance operation, you're provided that subordinate unit a reconnaissance objective. In a security operation, you provided a security objective. Those are embedded within the commander's reconnaissance security guidance. Okay, so the orientation of them is different, okay, but they are linked doctrinally by this continuous reconnaissance. At no point during a reconnaissance mission are you going to stop doing reconnaissance, right? I mean, it's in the title. You're supposed to be doing it, right? But security also involves reconnaissance. That is the doctrinal linkage between the two. And it's right there. You can't divorce the two. And it also goes to this idea of transitions. We talked about transitions from the offense to the defense. A reconnaissance and security formation, however it's task organized or built, exists to help set the conditions for that transition. We said culminating points should never be a surprise. Like surprise, we're out of bullets. Surprise, we're out of ammo. Surprise, the enemy's not where we expected them. Okay, we shouldn't be surprised for that. Because we're not surprised, we could use reconnaissance security formations to transition from reconnaissance to a security operation as the main body completes actions on the objective and begins to consolidate and everything else. So that is another relationship between reconnaissance and security. Just think about it, the transition, okay? So reconnaissance to identify the enemy's composition, disposition, intent. Reconnaissance may be oriented on some terrain or crossings, things like that. The main body executes, does their actions to seize, what we're trying to seize, Monroe? Is that what we're, to seize objective Monroe. I'm worried about this flank, okay, that I need a security operation while I transition the division to a hasty defense. That reconnaissance security formation does that in advance of. It begins to set the conditions for that transition, conducts a security operation while the actions on seizing Monroe are occurring so that the division can transition to a defense, okay? So think of it that way as well. That's how they are linked, and that's how we would describe, a commander would understand, visualize, and describe reconnaissance security. It's a way to describe and manage or anticipate or set conditions for or enable a transition. Okay? We good on how they're linked, why they're important, and why they cannot be divorced? Now, we've talked about this a couple times. It's a build slide. I'm sorry about that. Whoever built these slides, you know? Who puts in build slides anymore? It's like so 2007. Probably putting it on the share drive, right? So, reconnaissance guidance, security guidance. We would put this in where? Where would you actually, has anyone ever seen it published in any type of order, warning order, annex? I have one, seen it in a Warno 2. You're nodding your head. Just because you're like, look at my hair, I got good product in today. What do you want to say on that?
Oh, warning
order 2. You've actually seen it written out. Can you recall exactly what the language was used? Did it say, focus, enemy?
Yeah, it was more of like enemy in vicinity of this geographical feature, disposition, composition, gave us gave us our tempo. So security objective, or reconnaissance objective, tempo, pretty much gave us basic information.
Okay. Because the enemy situation or the understanding of the terrain is vague or certain? Probably vague, right? Or why would you send them? Okay. So it's about closing that gap on any uncertainty. So it has to be descriptive enough so that a subordinate commander can meet the objective, the reconnaissance objective, and can answer those PIRs, right? So it has to be descriptive. If it is prescriptive, that could be a problem because things have changed. When that unit LDs, the weather could change, enemy formations could change, support within a built-up town or something could change, things could change within the operating environment, right? From the LD of that formation, and then as that formation, that reconnaissance security formation interacts with the operating environment, it will change it as well. So when we look at either reconnaissance or security guidance from the commander, just remember where are you at in your understanding, visualization, and description of the operation and the plan. Like you got like a A- understanding, you got a B+, are you in the C range? Where do you think you are as a staff when you're advising a commander on writing this?
You would hope in the A. Right?
You would hope, but you're not. I mean, I've spent enough time with you. You're definitely not in the A.
Most certainly in the C plus to B minus range.
Okay. Maybe a grading rubric isn't the right thing. Like, it was my 4-year-old does, he does a thumbs up, he does a thumbs down, he does one of these. You know, on mealtime, he's like, eh. He's like, eh. So you're probably right here, right? Because remember, MDMP in the ops process is iterative, recursive. You've got to go through it multiple times. So we have to prioritize what we need from this reconnaissance operation, the specific gaps we have to close, okay? And you're advising based on your, dare I say, running estimates, okay? You're running estimates, what are those gaps that must be closed? And when we talk about initial reconnaissance operations, it's primarily oriented on closing gaps to enable continued planning. So remember, some of the things they're looking for is to actually get a better understanding of the fight and the terrain, the enemy, you know, to close gaps so we can continue planning. It isn't out just to win and destroy the elements of their cover group, okay? Though it would be fun, that sounds more like a movement to contact, you know, versus a zone or area reconnaissance. So it isn't just to go out and find the enemy and destroy them. It's to learn about them, and the longer we engage the enemy in a reconnaissance operation, the more they will reveal about their intentions. Okay? So that guidance has to be descriptive, not prescriptive. So I'm telling you, I know the doctrine gives out what you should talk about, what the commander and the staff come up with, and what the commander, as he or she's driving that ops process, what the commander actually is supposed to author, right? The commander's supposed to author this. But again, think about it as descriptive, all right, to give maximum latitude to that reconnaissance security formation with the minimum information, right? Maximum latitude, minimum information. Both of them have embedded in it is you have to set what that reconnaissance objective is. So if the objective for the reconnaissance is the composition of their main defensive belt, okay, and then there's enemy in between that, and there's a little bit of a scrap, okay, that subordinate unit knows my reconnaissance objective is this main defensive belt. So that commander knows, whether it's through explicitly stated in engagement, disengagement guidance, they know they've got to get to the main defensive belt, right? So they have that freedom of maneuver to orient on the reconnaissance objective. So it is descriptive. So that commander has wide latitude as long as they're oriented on what the boss told them to orient on, okay? So that's another one of those fundamentals that will tie in, okay? And then the security guidance is the same thing. What are we actually, the force or whatever it is we're protecting, what is the objective? Okay, and the guidance is sometimes we use it by time, for duration of time in which we provide security. Just like we've talked about, all operations, you cannot do them in perpetuity. You can't attack forever, you can't defend forever, you can't fix forever. You have to transition at some point, okay? So just remember where you are as a staff, and remember where the commander is with his or her understanding, visualization, and description. If we're only at Warn 02, maybe we can have more planning time and wait until Warn 03 if we have that luxury before we send out a reconnaissance security formation, and we'll have more detail. But I mean, Warn 02 is when you want them out. As a career cavalryman, I liked leaving at Warn 02, as I've described, so I never had to come back for any of the higher headquarters orders or rehearsals. Okay? It is only at the CTCs where they drive up there and they say, hey, you have to go back to this briefing. I'm here with the boys. We're in the fight. I'm in the fight now. You can't take me back. Nope. They just do that. They're like, nope, you have to come back and endure this with the rest of the staff and commanders. So that's the only reason I stayed in that type of formation. So guidance, we'll talk about the guidance. It'll be in the PE. So we'll explore that in the PE. What I'm looking for, again, is just descriptive. I don't need focus, enemy, 165. That's kind of prescriptive, right? Like, be descriptive about it. All right, now, what's our most favorite fundamental?
Do not leave reconnaissance assets in reserve.
So that might be more specific to an ABCT when they take the tank company out of the squadron and they use that as a reserve. No one else has anything now. So that could be an oddly specific one to an ABCT. But what is a reconnaissance asset? What does that mean? Okay, we have some UAS capabilities. We have some, okay, depending on where we're going, maybe we're going into urban area, we have some time. Maybe we need some human. Engineers, do we bring engineers with us?
Depends on what you're reconnaissance.
Yeah, I mean, we bring some engineers. They're not doing anything. I mean, what are they doing? Math? What are you doing back there? So maybe we bring some engineers. Who else would you want to bring? Yeah? Or not. I mean, I guess you go either way. Yeah, okay, Seaburn, based on the enemy threat, right? Met TCI, variables and considerations. Sure, you can bring Seaburn. What else do we want out there? Yeah, we do human, yeah, if we need it. We can do some EW, some kind of some kind of SIGINT maybe capability with us as well. We want snipers. Yeah. If we're in a first-player shooter game, yeah, we can bring snipers out. I'm not sure, but I get it.
You need artillery.
Artillery, says the artillerist. Why would I need artillery?
You're supposed to gain and maintain enemy contact.
Oh. Oh, that's another fundamental? Oh. So I need artillery.
You do.
Huh. Well, heck, while I'm on the artillery thing, could I get helicopters?
Yeah.
I should, right? Yeah. Probably not. I mean, we used to have, in the regiment, we used to have our own helicopters, so it was always pretty easy, right? Okay, so I need engineers. I need artillery. Might as well get some helicopters. Naval gunfire? Depends, right? Maybe. Okay. Seaburn, a couple of the INTs represented. Can I get any of those satellites with the space laser thing? No? Every time I need you in the fight space, you're gone. Every time I request the space laser, I get nothing. Okay, but it's in every single picture we show of a satellite, it has a laser coming out of it. So don't talk to me about classification. It's on the picture. It's a laser. All right, so assets in reserve, and then gain and maintain enemy contact. Oh, develop the situation rapidly. What's that? Rapid in context of what? Well, okay, and then yes, but let's use, that's a mechanism we can use, tempo, the overall flow of the operation, right? The tempo of the operation. So when we mean rapidly, it's based on the offensive tempo if we were attacking, or perhaps the tempo of the enemy if we're defending, okay? So we're going to use the understanding of the tempo of the fight. That depends how rapidly I have to develop the situation. What does that all mean? You guys, everything you just described, it is inherently a combined arms team. It is inherently a combined arms team. Because you've got to do all of these things, so you need the capacity, enough stuff, and the unique capabilities to deal with all that. So as you said, we might need artillery, to maintain contact. Nothing tells the enemy, I know that you know that I know where you are because I dropped artillery on you. So I'm watching you from somewhere, and I'm in contact with you, okay? But that does extend the reach of the formation, okay? And it can reveal something about the enemy at depth. Meaning if we're dropping artillery and we're a reconnaissance fight, something could reveal and something gets repositioned, right? So that's probably a good thing. So it's inherently combined arms, okay? What echelon should it be for, like if we're going to task organize one for a division, maybe you'll encounter this in the future. Your division, what echelon command can you get away with task organizing this formation under? A brigade? You're willing to give up a brigade? Oh, we're talking about practice. We're talking about the game. That's practice. What are you going to do? What's the echelon of headquarters you could probably afford to give up and still accomplish this mission? It's probably an 05 billet with the requisite C2 architecture. I think you could give up a brigade. That'd be pretty tough. I mean, why am I saying that? Why am I arguing that? Are brigade commanders better than battalion commanders? No. They have more stuff? Okay. Okay, so let's not talk about practice. Talk about the game. It's probably a battalion. Probably the battalion is that's the first headquarters in which you have a staff. Okay, so you might have to augment that staff, but it's the first headquarters where you actually have a staff. So a troop or company is probably too small for a division. Couldn't do it, right? They don't have a staff. Or the C2 architecture to support. It's probably a battalion. I think a brigade is probably too big. But when you look at your task org and you go through your mission analysis and you develop your COAs, you can come back and make any argument you want. All right, so inherently combined arms. we've gotten this reconnaissance objective from the commander's initial, could be problem statement. If we had a really, what do we want, a really pithy problem statement, maybe that's the first couple of PIRs that we're getting out from the commander. Okay, maybe from that problem statement we could discern what the reconnaissance objective must be. What are the gaps that must be closed for the staff and the commander to continue planning? Okay? All right, now, don't worry, we're going to go on break. So these are techniques. Has anyone heard these described in the description by a commander or S3, G3? We're going to do a push, we're going to do a pull. Push, pull, 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 push. Okay. What's the difference between the two? You can read it, but...
Pushing to the objective, you're trying to figure out the ins out of the objective. Pulling, you're pulling something forward with you through a route that you probably recon to ease their entrance into the
kind of trailed off and got a little mumbly there. What?
So pull, you're generally pulling them on the best route, trying to get them to the objective, like somebody else get them to the objective, whereas a push, you're pushing reconnaissance forces out to survey an objective, trying to figure out enemy forces from there.
Maybe did you say it backwards? Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you should read the slide. What do you think?
Holding the main body forwards. Yeah. Pushing.
What's the certainty of the knowledge?
So you push them to specific areas.
Because I have a higher degree of understanding.
Yeah,
right.
Pull is you don't have a high degree of understanding.
Pull, you're pulling them because you have a less higher degree. That sounded good. You're not so smart enough on the enemy. You're less smarter. I know it seems counterintuitive, but the only way we can get people to read FM 398 is make it confusing so people fight over it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm pulling you through an uncertain area. I'm pushing you through a more certain area.
I backfired on us. I got rid of it.
You would think if it's uncertain, you would just like push them through, right? Like, hey, good luck, boys. See you on the high ground. But yeah. It's another tool or a framework that a commander and staff can use to help describe the reconnaissance security, right? And it would get to the preparation phase for that subordinate unit. It would help that during parallel planning, that would help that subordinate commander begin to prioritize. Okay, so if there's a higher degree of uncertainty and the technique was given as a pull, then they would look at their task organization. They might look at how they change their task organization, okay, how they're going to echelon over time. Okay, so they would look at it differently versus a push. A push is I'm oriented on a pretty narrow area and we're really confident in executing this course of action based on what we know so far. So maybe I'll go a little faster and just be really specific about where I'm going, whereas a pull, I've got to think about it. So it can be a helpful tool to describe, okay? Okay, we got a couple methods. Now you can look at your slides, flip ahead. What's your favorite? You got to go to all of them. Just don't pick these two. There's another slide behind it.
Dismounted.
Aerial reconnaissance.
Oh.
Then you don't have to put people in front of.
Oh, yeah, because God forbid, right? We get in a fight, right? That'd be terrible.
All of them.
All of them. You should use them all, right? That's like spoiler alert, right? If we're combined arms formation, we should use all of them. Okay. But there's advantages and disadvantages of each, of course, right? So what's the advantage of mounted? Can be quicker. I mean, you know, can be quicker. What do I have though if I'm mounted typically? Yeah, if I'm going to show up for a fight with my friends and guns, I probably want to bring bigger guns, right? All right, so typically we could be limited though in the terrain. Maybe we are road bound at certain points. So, but the advantage is if I need to, I can overcome chance encounter with the enemy, right? I can overwhelm them with if I'm mounted. Okay, so if I have chance encounter and ends up in a meeting engagement, I can overcome them. But I am somewhat limited and predictable and how I will do that reconnaissance because I am mounted. It's pretty predictable that there's only 6 roads. They're going to be somewhere along these roads, right? So dismounted, the advantage is, of course, go anywhere. Could be stealth. Okay? So there's an advantage to that, right? They can move to certain areas. If I have, can I do reconnaissance of a built-up area? Yeah. Do I want to do that with a Bradley and tank parked on the hilltop? I mean, unless I'm sending a different message, right? I mean, but maybe I want to use dismounted reconnaissance there, okay? What if I'm doing reconnaissance in advance of an offensive operation, and part of one of the forms of maneuver was infiltration? Yeah, we're probably going to use dismounted, right? So that we can get to that, get them to the attack position, get them to whatever the release point will be for the lane for the infiltration. We could use reconnaissance to do that. So using that form of maneuver, I do dismounted, okay? And then we've got, all right, aerial reconnaissance. What's the limitation of aerial reconnaissance? Weather, flight time, the flight time of the weather, on crew rest. We have Apaches, right? So maintenance. Who owns those aircrafts in a division? Those platforms. Who are they owned by? We got the cab commander, but who do they work for? Maybe I'll say it that. Yeah, the division commander. So, if I've got a Spike Hellfire, am I one to have it committed to this unknown enemy situation? Because you didn't tell me I should bring any SHORAD out on my recon security. You left that out, so I don't have any SHORAD with me. If you'd given it to me in our description earlier, then I'd feel okay. But I have no SHORAD with my reconnaissance formation right now. So aerial reconnaissance is limited by weather, okay? And then the juice has to be worth the squeeze. The division commander, it has to be worth it to him or her to commit that asset at that time in the fight where it is still uncertain, okay? Reconnaissance by fire. That's the most fun, right? You've been dragging around in the woods for days and like, hey, I think the enemy's on the hill, and then you just do exactly that, right? You're going to elicit a response from the enemy. The whole point is, though, at the echelon, this is like a battalion or task force mission, and there's a maneuvering unit in support of it. That is not everyone pops up out of the wood line and just starts shooting in a direction, okay? It's an actual thing, and it's laid out in your readings. But reconnaissance in force, okay? So we're going to do one more quick bit on, no, we're not. You know what? You won me over. Let's go ahead on break. All right, we are back on.
Back on the mic.
We're back on. All right, so in the intro, I mentioned reconnaissance management, and some of these terms you're seeing on your left-hand, on the left-hand side of the slide, you may have been familiar with Army targeting methodology, or D3A. You may have just heard it in regular conversation at the water bubbler in the hallway or something. I don't know. My family, we kind of end up talking about this, right? Yeah, Taylor Swift, and then I'm like, yeah, but let's really talk about mixing and redundancy, right? So it's dinner table conversation in my house, but maybe we're not all familiar with that. Okay, so before we do that, just do a little pop quiz as we look at the graphic. Let's kind of just go through some of these graphic control measures to make sure we understand them. Go from top to bottom. Let's just highlight some of these because, we need to know them. What's the top one? Okay, what's a coordinated fire line? It's in an entire appendix of 390. It has them all. Remember I said you might want to pull that out and just hold on to it because you'll use it again? So what is the CFL? All surface-to-surface, willy-nilly, whatever I want to do.
There's stuff to it, but technically.
Technically. So we would just say that would be a permissive fire support coordination or control measure. So that'd be permissive. CFL, okay. Who could put in a CFL? There's a lot of anxiety. You could geek out on it later. You could listen to my podcast on, no. Hey, have you guys signed up for my Substack on graphic control measures yet? Okay. Okay, so CFL, that has to do with surface-to-surface fires, right? And we talked about that. If we're doing recon security, we need to be combined arms, so we probably need a CFL. Maybe that reconnaissance security formation's in control of that CFL and they get to move it. Keep it in nice and tight so they can shoot whatever they want up there. We can get into that in the PE. All right, what's the next one below that? Okay. Why do we need that? You guys should probably just open the appendix from the manual and just pull it right out of doctrine. You don't have to make it up.
It's useful to know to clear ground, potentially for a fire mission, and kind of track where your soldiers are.
Okay. Anything else? Does it say anything else in the book? Why we care about a FLOT? It's a whole appendix. I promise you you'd have to use it again. I wasn't lying. You will speak the vocabulary when we leave here. So, we got to trust anything beyond that's enemy? Sure. Okay, so just have the appendix up now as we work through the rest of this little exercise, okay? So what's the next one here? We got here? We got some NAIs. Those are? Okay, what do I use those for?
Focus to answer reactions for information collection.
All right, so it's the focus of reconnaissance, right? So I have some prediction of the future. I predicted the future at a certain time and on this certain place. I should see this certain thing. And if I do see this certain thing, there'll be subsequent or follow-on actions I take. Okay, so it gives us orientation, okay? So that's an NAI. There's a definition in doctrine that works on it a little more, right? So what are these little triangle guys here? These little triangles? Okay, so that is an OP, observation post, okay? So if in this scenario, it's an OP, all right? So what does an OP do? Oh, yeah, it's in the title. Okay, they observe, right? They're observing from hopefully a covered and concealed position. They're looking for that thing or things within that NAI to confirm or deny, whatever it is, all right? So OP, typically, that would be dismounted. Maybe, right? It's dismounted, it's got to get in close, it's got to be in a hide, it's got to look, it's two brave scouts with some Skittles and some binos, maybe a bunch of Copenhagen, whatever, right? And they're there in the OP, okay. Do they answer the PIR for the commander?
They can.
Should they? No, I mean, these were the kids who were just testing their body armor with a 3-man slingshot before they LD'd, right, to see if it worked. So should we trust them with that? I'm not kidding. When we finally got issued plates way back in WWOIF1, I caught the scouts using a 3-man slingshot to shoot at the plates of their partner to see if the plates worked. That's not, the plates are a one and done, right? Like physics and stuff. I was quite animated in my response to these young scouts. And we didn't have enough plates for everybody, so you only got one plate, right? So, like, you're killing me here. But anyway, that's the level we're dealing with. So you probably just want to start them with some simple things. Is it friendly or enemy? That's important to know. Simple yes, no questions that as we go up the chain, we aggregate that and we make some assessments. Okay, so friendly or enemy? Tractor wheeled. Really, really simple stuff. Okay, and then we can build the picture from there. Okay, we don't really think they're going to be counting road wheels on a tank and, you know, has a lot of antennas. Okay, how many is a lot? It looks like it's got 2. Okay, thank you. 2 antennas on a wheeled vehicle. But it's enemy? I'm not sure. Okay, here we go. Is that the chaplain out there again? Did they get lost? All right, so we do have to be specific, right? So the commander's guidance is descriptive. As we come down into Annex L, it has to get prescriptive for them, okay? All right, so we've got this little hat thing wearing with the S. What's that? Screen. Okay, listen, I know there's some limitations on CPCE or other tools we use to put graphics digitally on maps and whatnot. Okay, it's not a huge pet peeve, but the hat, you can see it kind of looks like a hat. Okay, the hat is oriented on the force protected. So don't have it flip the other way, because then you're technically doing a screen to protect the enemy. It doesn't make any sense, right? You see where I'm going with there? Okay, so a screen. Okay, what's a fababula? Fababula? Fibabula? Are those two separate things? Oh, they're two different things. What are they? Wait, what's that? How's the FIBA different from the FLOT?
FIBA is a component of your main force, whereas a FLOT is your forwardmost element.
So why does that make a difference?
It's like in a defense, you would use a FIBA because you have a majority of your forces, and you could have fires between the FIBA and the CFL, knowing that your scouts are forward of that FIBA.
Oh, okay. So it's two different things? But what about in a security operation time and maneuver space? Engagement criteria, disengagement criteria. As a cognitive tool for a commander and staff to understand basically the geometry out there and the time distance, these could be really helpful tools to use a FIBA and a FLOT. Okay, to help with the analysis for a staff, to inform decision making. You know, as the architects of decisions, these could be helpful tools to have a FIBA and a FLOT. What's a bullhole? Bullhole. B-A bullhole. Okay, what's that? Just read it off the thing. Like we're not. Like I don't want your answers. I want the book answer.
A stationary force moving to a mobile force, or vice versa.
Wait, so the battle handover line is that moving formations?
Well, it says for the book.
So if your screen's in place.
Okay, that's the key takeaway. It's the transfer of responsibility. The transfer of responsibility. Okay, so that is not a high five, right? A battle handover line would have some criteria and handoff, right? Okay.
Are the FIBA and the VHL normally the same?
They don't have to be, but as long as you understand the purposes of both, you could see why geographically they could go in the same place. But the battle handover is the transfer of responsibility from one to another friendly unit. Okay, so transfer of responsibility, so that would be direct, indirect fires, all of those things, okay? Not reflected on this particular chart, we have another couple lines. We have an IHL, which is a what? Okay, and then do we have a reconnaissance handover in your readings? Yes. Oh, okay, what's that? What is that the transfer of?
Transfer of information and responsibility for observation.
So one, it could be within the same formation. There could be a handover from this OP to this OP. It could be from this aggregate formation, this reconnaissance security formation, to a brigade behind them. Okay, so intel is the same thing, but like think of a corps and a division. So that means that the intel warfighting function, that cell, is actually caught up and able to pick up the analysis and the collection, that it's handed down and the responsibility has now been given to that division because the corps is now lifted and they're looking somewhere else. So with all of these, you don't want a gap. You don't want to create your own gap in this transfer of responsibility, okay? So we have a reconnaissance handover and a battle handover. We have an intel handover, okay? So we have all these handovers, but you just got to remember it's the actual responsibility. It has to be done, command and control. It can't just be, okay, we've hit recon handover. Cool. Did you see anything? No, I mean, it was a pretty quiet night as a tank battalion comes screaming up the eastern flank, right? So no hidden SIGACs, you know, you got to actually hand it over, okay? What is this EA? We talked about them a little bit in the defense. Okay, you guys, I got it that you can translate the acronym into the full word, and I appreciate that, but the definition and the dialogue associated with it is important. Go.
And it's an area where the commander masses effects to contain and destroy an enemy force.
So like mass and concentration from one of the characteristics of the defense? Okay, that's how we use an engagement area. Does it always have to be a box? Okay. Should an EA actually reflect the size where you're actually engaging? Oh, so it's somewhat prescriptive? Okay, so an EA is an actual graphic control measure that controls movement, maneuver, fires, everything else, okay? What are these little ovals with those little slashies there behind them? Battle positions, okay. I think we all understand what a battle position is, where I position myself for battle. Probably how you guys would answer it. The battle position, so it's where I position myself for battle. There is no time. Okay, phase lines, we know what those are. Okay, what do the dashy ones mean? Okay, got it. All right, what's this red double hat? Okay, so we're going to assess that's their main effort. We just apply our kind of graphic control measure on theirs. Okay, so we'll have to remain familiar with these graphic control measures. Use the appendix provided in 390 to make sure we're correct. Okay, so now we have these three management techniques, methods, whatever you want to call them, okay? So, of these, which is our favorite? Queuing. Why queuing? Because it's the best word. Yeah, it's like gubernatorial. It's just a great word. I love queuing and gubernatorial. All right, so why queuing?
Because you need to find, or you need to confirm or corroborate.
Corroborate. The defense rests, Your Honor.
Big words. So one sensor is going to give you one piece of information. Another sensor needs to be queued to then validate what information that is and confirming, like, yep, that's indeed what it says it is.
They are who we thought they were, right?
It also provides continuous observation on the objective, so that you don't have a break in observation.
So we don't have a break in observation, right? Because some of these capabilities could be kind of niche. They may have a time on, time off. But what was just described is it has to be planned and resourced ahead of time. Okay, so if we have this asset looking to confirm or deny this type of signal, right, we have to have planned another asset that queues off of that information coming in and then can confirm or deny. So it has to be planned and resourced. All right, so you can't just say, oh, we're using queuing. No, you have to show and resource that, okay, over time, space, purpose, okay? Who does that who does that? Who's the actual person in charge of building that schedule? Collection manager, yeah. Yeah, at a brigade level, it's typically a lieutenant. And given their wealth of experience, that's the right person for it, honestly. And they're always frazzled and they're always excitable. Okay, so that's queuing. Think about, I mean, you read the definition, but follow on. Something has to be resourced and aligned to it. You can't just say we're queuing. You have to do the work, do the science. All right, mixing. What would be two or more different assets within an NAI to confirm or deny something? Scouts, maybe some UAS, some signally. Okay. Could do that. We could mix a couple in there. So that the difference between mixing and queuing, though, is with queuing, it's a very specific thing. It could be a high payoff target, let's say. It has a unique signature. I get it. I then bring another asset. I've queued another asset to confirm it. Okay, so when you're committing a lot of resources, has to be really important to the commander, right? Okay, so maybe it's a high payoff target. Okay, mixing, a couple different assets to look, okay. Well, we're a combined arms team, though we didn't bring SHORAD. We don't have any air defense with us. But we're a combined arms team, so we can mix that up. Does that mean mix up mounted and dismounted, or does that mean different collection disciplines? Okay, so it's not about just aerial and ground. That's not mixing. Different collection, okay? So think about signals, human, other things, okay? That's how we'd mix. Okay, what is redundancy? From the Department of Redundancy Department, we bring you redundancy. What's that? What's...
like dismounted screen and OP at the same time, observing objectives, so 2 like assets.
Okay, like assets. Like, no kidding, we can't let this battalion get through. So, like assets, because it's important. And I might increase my chances of finding it versus, because you still can have gaps with mixing and queuing, but I go with redundancy, and it has to be something they can find, right? These like assets. Okay, so we're good on those 3? Good. No, we're not going to build it. You can build it and follow along on your break. All right, so these are the types. We described them earlier in the class. All right, so we see we have a zone up there. That tends to be our default, right? And why does it become our default? Because it encompasses everything. Okay. It's the easiest one to say. Like, hey, we're going to do zone recon, right? Because if I'm doing everything, then I may not be doing anything. See the problem there? I have a time problem. So I can't learn everything. I have to discern what's most important. Okay, so that is one of the limitations, is the time and the resources involved with a zone. And if it is entirely too broad, or I haven't specified it in the guidance or further on in my Annex L, I could just send them out there for days, learning everything about nothing that's important to the commander. That made sense, right? I could learn everything about the OE, but none of it may be important to the commander.
When you look at a zone, like you just kind of said, how much larger of that is an area?
I guess we want to break the geographic kind of thing on a zone. It could still, the zone isn't geographically limited or more expansive. It is about the level of detail or things you have to look for in it, right? So as you read further on the zone reconnaissance, it's bridge classifications. It's the flow of rate and flow depth of a river. It's everything in there. The culvert, what type of culvert? If you're looking at a gap crossing, it goes into all the infrastructure, geological, hydrology. What type of buildings are in that built-up area? Is it cinder block? Is it this? Is it that? It goes on and on and on and on. So it's every detail. Okay, so the roads, what kind of roads are they? How wide are they? Slope of a curve, you know what I mean? Curve of the curve. Can you get a truck around that corner? There's math involved, all that stuff. So it's about the details that they want out of it, okay? Or the commander wants out of it, or the staff requires out of it, okay? And then we talked about an area, it still encompasses the same tasks, okay, but it is smaller in area. Now here's the thing though, it's in our relationship to the enemy. So when our reconnaissance security formation crosses LD, are they in bad guy territory? Okay, so in a zone reconnaissance, you'll secure your LD and then you'll go on your zone reconnaissance. Now, if I'm doing an area reconnaissance and it's way over here, how do I get from here to this area I'm looking at? So you have to have some kind of offensive capability, you have to have combined arms. You may have to fight for information before you get to that area and fight for information in that area, okay? And it's the same thing with the route. The route is what? Could be terrain, it could be a road, whatever, right? The route reconnaissance also encompasses that terrain that can influence movement along that route as well. So what we typically see is there will be the operation at the divisional level will be a zone reconnaissance. And then it will be broken down further into an area reconnaissance, a combination of area reconnaissance mission or operations and route reconnaissance within the zone. That is a way you can break it down as well. But once you're put in that box, there's enemy in that box, okay? Reconnaissance in force, yes. That's the most fun. But the key thing there is there's a maneuver unit somewhere or something is planned against that. It's just like, all right, we're tired, we don't know what's going on, just start shooting and see what happens. That's not how that works. Okay, you have a general idea, but you can't discern their full composition, disposition, and strength, so you've aligned some other maneuver element, indirect fire, to get the enemy's response so that the higher headquarters can react to that response, okay? And then the last one, who does that? Yeah. Now that has been integrated into their doctrine. It did not get removed from our doctrine. But the holder of that mission still is retained by the SOF community, though it is still reflected in our doctrine, but it is reflected in their doctrine. But they have primacy on that particular mission set, okay? So are we going to do special reconnaissance? No. Typically, no. Typically, no, but possibly no. Okay. So what's out of date on this slide? Yeah. Nope. Don't have that anymore. Well, we don't have it everywhere anymore, okay? So the challenge now for a staff and a commander is recognizing the importance of it, of reconnaissance security operations, and how do they task organize a subordinate unit to do that. Okay, so it will be inherently ad hoc formation, okay? There's a lot of different ways, a lot of different units are working through this problem set. I can offer you no real solution, okay? We're going to go through these all very quickly. We don't need the graphics, okay? We're going to do this all in the PE. So we got the route reconnaissance, okay? We talked about engineers maybe come on with you, okay? This used to be a 1930 level task to do road classifications back in the day. But what you see here is, yeah, you're oriented on the route, terrain in and around the route, specific, whether it's culverts, bridge crossings, slopes, curves, whatever it is, you're looking at that as well. So the technical classification usually now done by engineers, okay? But if someone has one of their old scout handbooks, they could pull that out and do it too. It's just math. Or try to drive that curve at multiple different speeds and then be like, all right, we can't go over 40 around this corner. And let's try to drive up this hill. Give it some gas, oh yeah, we can get up this hill with a towing a pallet and it'll be fine. So you could test it the old-fashioned way by just doing it, or you could do arithmetic and do some calculations. But if you leave it to scouts, they'll just try it until it doesn't work anymore. Okay, so the route. Just pay attention to some of the control measures. Okay, so you still have graphic control measures within reconnaissance security operation. We're talked about this: gain information about the enemy, not the terrain. I'm only focused on the enemy. Not typically done. We're going to get into this in the PE. What that is the crosswalk of gaps. Now we've pulled from MA, and then the methodology we'd use as a staff to turn them into PIR. and then the supporting SIR and IRs. Okay? Now, as we talked about before, not every PIR grows up to be a CCIR. So some of them will not be critical information for the commander. They may be important, but they're not critical for the commander. Okay? So these are our considerations here. Okay. What do you think I think's important? Oh, what are you talking about? I left with 3 DOS, whatever that means. I left with 3 days of supply. I should be good. Oh, dang, Scouts. Scout snack, okay? No. I mean, they're fine. I have never seen a hungry Scout. I'm just saying. Remember Jeb Stewart was out there foraging. I mean, it's in our lineage, right? Like, we don't have hungry Scouts. Riding by, clean shaven, waving from my tank. Oh, you guys humped all the way that hill all night with those javelins. I'll go take the objective. You didn't fire a shot, did you? Okay. Yes, that of course happens. You know you're doing the right thing when infantrymen are giving you the finger as you're going in on the objective. You know you did something right. You know you picked the right branch at that point. Okay, so we talked about this yesterday, or no, whenever. When was I last in here? A month ago, something like that? Tuesday. When I talked about some observations or things I've observed in the class, one of them is this thing about assumptions and how we are capturing these assumptions and how we are carrying them forward. Okay, that is where staffs will, you rise and fall on the assumptions. Forgetting that it is an assumption, and by passage of time, it just becomes a fact. That is not good staff work, okay? So with the IPO and all these gaps we've identified, it's these assumptions, okay? The assumptions that we use in our planning. Because the scouts are out doing the recon, they're continuing to develop that situation, report timely and accurate information to inform the planning efforts. Okay? So the assumptions is kind of what they're out there, right? An assumption is a gap. Recon and security closes that gap. We assume that bridge low water crossing 5, everyone assumes low water crossing 5 will not be defended by the enemy. And then you get to low water crossing 5, and guess what? There's enemy. Okay, so we've got to be really deliberate in the assumptions that we're using. Okay, so that would be the key thing as we look at the staff integrating process of IPO. Okay, this transition or this evolution into an information collection plan, reflected in Annex L. Okay, these assumptions that we're using. Okay, we've talked about transitions and how reconnaissance security formation can be used in transitions or should be used in a transition. That is part of what we're thinking about. Okay. Task org, everything but air defense. We said everything but air defense. Okay, so yes, sustainment is important. Why is sustainment important when you're doing reconnaissance security?
You can't just drive up and deliver it to them. You can't just drive up and deliver it to them. You have to coordinate a way to get it to them without breaking their concealment.
Yeah, they're hiding. Okay. So it could be hard to get resupply up to them, or you just spread it out over time. Maybe you cache some supplies here and there so they can pick it up later, and they go back and pick it up, hopefully before the enemy. What's another thing that could happen if we're on if we're doing reconnaissance security operations? What's another thing that's a problem to get back? We've got supplies, so resupply of beans, bullets, ammo, whatever. What's that? Batteries. Whoo! Batteries, huge. Batteries, the consumption rate of batteries is between the PlayStations and the Xbox and all that stuff, right? They're chewing batteries up, okay? So some of those, some of those capabilities chew a lot of batteries. Okay, what else? Wounded casualties. It doesn't mean just, because if there was enemy contact, right, we had engagement, disengagement criteria. Okay, we would have a plan for that during disengagement criteria, and if there are casualties, we'd already have a plan for that to go somewhere and execute a CASEVAC, medevac situation, right? So that's part of how we can use engagement, disengagement criteria. For enemy contact, we're engaged, we disengage, we know we move here, everybody knows what to do, and we should have a plan for dealing with casualties, okay, with enemy contact. But it is trips, falls, sprains, illness, shut their hand in a hatch, like actual soldiers getting hurt that require medical attention, okay? So medevac or CASEVAC is a problem, and it has to be planned out, okay? But if we use our engagement, disengagement criteria properly, we can account for some of that enemy action and have something in place for medevac, right? We shouldn't be surprised by that, or we can't just get away with saying, well, it's really hard. It's not an acceptable answer. You got to plan for it and resource it, but it's all the other things, okay? Dehydration, any of these things that are occurring, right? As we're talking ops for a few days, where it's not a planned response to enemy action. Okay? So sustain, we've got to look at that. We've already talked about graphic control measures. We talked about the reconnaissance handover, right, to maintain the initiative. We just don't let things pass at night. If I were the commander, where would I assume risk? What do you think? We'd just attack, like there would be no reconnaissance. We would just attack. If you give me a combined arms team, you give me helicopters, gave me everything, I'm just going to attack. I'd assume risk on this whole recon op, and I would just attack. Like if you're silly enough to give me all that combat power and ask me to be passive and find the enemy, I would just probably attack. It'd be way easier. Okay? All right, so we're going to work through this in the PE. We've described it, okay? This is as we translate the commander's understanding, visualization, and description coming out of MA. Warno 2, given in greater detail, get to that level of granularity we need in Annex L. This is the framework that a commander and staff uses to describe what's the purpose of reconnaissance security, okay? And we're going to work this in the PE. The objective. Things happen from LD to the actual objective, but that subordinate commander, he or she must know what they're really out there. What's the one thing I've got to learn? There's 500,000 things I can learn, but what's the one thing I've got to learn? Or the two things I must learn, okay? So that gives them the freedom of maneuver to get there. Okay, now we're in security fundamentals. Again, how many types of security ops are there? And we said our favorite was what? The screen? Okay. So, early and accurate warning. How early is early? Yeah, earlier better? Accurate better? Should I wait a little longer to get an accurate report, or should I go hysterical and shrill as soon as I see the enemy? What do you think we should do there? Somewhere in between. So the Army answer is yes, both, and more. Okay, well, don't worry. Doctrine gave us a way to deal with this, right? This fundamental. Early and accurate warning, right? Well, accurate, that's tough, right? Every report is inaccurate, right? All right. Last year there was a report of what was it, PCC, and a fist fight happened on the hallway. And that thing spread like wildfire, none of which was true. There was no fist fight of pre-command course students in the hallway. There was no fisticuff ever. But I think someone was trolling, and they started it, and it was within hours, it was everywhere. And then students are telling me, did you hear about the fight? And I'm like, what fight? Okay, so we know we can't report accurately, but we're limited, right? We can limit this because there are very specific things we're supposed to report, right? Can our scouts, or during a security operation, can they be on their radios broadcasting at high power, omnidirectional, at forever? Sure, if they want to be found, right? Yeah, we do it anyway, but you're not supposed to, okay? You're not supposed to do that because it makes you really, really easy to find. All right, so we already know what we must report and when it must be reported. One of the frameworks we use is, it was said earlier, LTIOV, which stands for last time information of value. Okay, there's a little brain calculation that goes on in the staff. Okay, if I get this information, it says this, if it's a yes or a no, and I have to make a decision, how early do I need that information so that I still can make the decision? So you just do a little rough math, okay, and you figure out what the LTIOV is. So that's how we get timely, early, okay, reporting. We've narrowed the scope of what they're looking for out there, okay? So a way to think about it is that it's the easy one is the presence of the extraordinary, right? A tank battalion, right? The presence of the extraordinary is pretty easy to report and understand. It is the absence of the ordinary is where we can run into trouble, right? So if it's a built-up area, right, the absence of the ordinary things going on there are also an indicator. Okay, so the absence of enemy is an indicator as well, okay? So it's not just the presence of the extraordinary, the tank battalion bearing down on the eastern flank. It's the absence of the ordinary. If we had this really elaborate, nuanced NAIs, we got some queuing, collection managers pumped up, queuing stuff in, we're mixing and got a little redundancy over here and we're all over it. We've got depth, we're all excited, but we don't see the enemy. The absence of that is equally important, okay? So when we say reaction time and maneuver space, that is to the next echelon of the force protected. We're providing them the maneuver space and reaction time, okay? So that's what you're providing them, okay? And then the doctrinal linkage between reconnaissance and security is embedded right there. There's nothing static about security operations. There's nothing stationary about security operations, okay? Screens, huh? Whatever. Okay, so early warning. So it provides the least amount of protection to, let's say it's a higher echelon commander. It would provide the least amount of security. Because all you're doing is telling them they're coming from this direction, okay? So that would change how you task organize it, and you could perhaps, you know, economize that force a certain bit, put some of that capability into the main effort and not be violating the reconnaissance assets in reserve, okay? So least amount of security. Then we go to a guard. Protects the main body, yeah, that's who it's oriented on. Okay, time preventing ground observation and direct fire, okay. So no ground observation or direct fire. What does that mean the main body can receive? Indirect fire. So you're not so far out that you're going to deny indirect fire, and you're also reliant on that higher headquarters to provide you with that indirect fire. So you cannot operate independently in a guard. All right, so you have some more capability to fight for information and to provide time and maneuver space to that protected force of that main body, but you're still pretty well tied to that main body, okay, in the realm of indirect fire and other things, okay? So that's a guard, okay? The cover is the highest level of security, but of course then requires the most stuff and things because it operates independently, well outside, you know, far enough outside that security zone is far enough outside to deny the enemy placing indirect fires on the main body. Okay? So doctrinally, what's the lowest echelon we can execute a cover? Well, I'm telling you, my doctrine. You can't do a cover unless you have a what? Has to be brigade level. So, has to be brigade level to do it. It has to be able to operate independently. Okay? So a brigade is the only formation that can operate independently. For duration, right? So you got to be at ample depth, right? So, sufficient depth for ample duration to achieve the outcome of a cover. So it has to be able to operate independently, okay? Just to keep it simple, you can't do it outside of a brigade. An 06 headquarters, not a brigade combat team, an 06 headquarters with the organic or attached enablers that allow it to operate independently. Okay? We've already talked about how this flows from screen up to cover. So now we'll just kind of review these real quick of the tasks for each of the screens. You're going to pull these forward and apply them as you go through your PE. Okay? This all has to be based on some type of IPO, right? That staff integrating process has to somehow be informed by some mission analysis, some analysis of what we're doing. Okay, so it's informed by, and the commander is going to own the risk with the lowest level of security provided to the main body by directing a screen. Within the screen, though, there are still offensive and defensive capabilities. There's still the tactical task of counter-reconnaissance, which is to clear, repel, destroy the enemy's reconnaissance assets there, okay, within this security zone, okay? So least level of protection, and then you'll just pull this list forward and apply it as necessary within the PE. The guard, we talked about it. You can still get indirect fire from the enemy, but you're denying the enemy ground observation and direct fire onto the main body, but that guard force is reliant on that higher headquarters. Okay? See the little shooty? But that came from the higher headquarters. Okay? It's not organic to the guard force. It's the same thing here. So if we can get the enemy in a guard to deploy early, reveal the disposition of their main effort, whatever it is, then the guard is successful. Okay? We've provided that time and maneuver space for that main body commander to make the decision. We'll apply these in the PE. Cover, we talked about that. The difference is in this picture, of course, is that they have an artillery battalion, okay? And they're fighting. Same thing. Will we come up with a cover today? No. You guys are going to represent brigades in the PE. So you won't do it. We're going to finish the slides, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll kind of go over the highlights and the things we're going to take into our PE here, okay? So area security, we first addressed this, as I said, in the stability class, okay? So area security. Oh, look, it says right there, concerned with consolidating gains. Man, look at that linkage. All right, so it looks a little like a perimeter defense, though, doesn't it? Remember the picture of the perimeter defense? But it's not. Okay, the orientation, of course, or the purpose of it is different. Okay? So area security oriented on the force protected. So here it's depicting a friendly unit, but it could be to protect local population in a built-up area. It could be to protect a combination of, you know, as we look at, what were the two we had? Remember that class? We had the what and the one. And to get unity of effort, we had, what is it? In the stability class? What are those two things? Had the circle chart. What was that in that slideshow of comprehensive versus what? Oh, whole of government. Oh, okay. two different approaches, right? So perhaps in a comprehensive approach in which we're trying to get NGOs and IGOs and other people, and they maybe are in some kind of campus or kind of secure area, we might have responsibility to provide area security in and around there. Okay, so could be a linkage there, but it is still about transitioning from a battle or engagement to make those temporary gains permanent as we transition to follow on offensive ops, defensive ops, things like that. Again, area security, just like all of them, is inherently offensive and defensive in nature. All security ops are. They all include aspect of counter reconnaissance. So, how do you define the security objective? What's a good security objective? I mean, your readings didn't give you a very good answer, right? Well, understanding the purpose of security operations and adhering to the fundamentals, given our fundamentals of security ops, understanding the purpose of why we do security, so as a force protected, what would be an objective you could give to a subordinate unit conducting a guard, or screen, or cover? Tie it back to the main body. Look at the fundamentals of security and then just spit one out. You can flip to the slide that says fundamentals of security.
Flank of the brigade, division, whatever.
So just say that again, because
Screen the flank, the west flank, east, whatever, of whatever force you're protecting, the brigade.
okay, but the objective is not the screen, that's the operation. What's the security objective?
The flank of the brigade,
Yeah.
the western flank.
That's the operation. What's the objective? It's got to be something specific. To prevent something from happening, to provide a certain amount of time to do something. So the objective has to be something, so when things go sideways, right? So if I'm screening, that's my operation. The objective of the screen is to prevent no more than 2 companies oriented along this route. So if I have to reposition within my screen and transition to an offensive operation to achieve that, or I need to request fires from the higher headquarters to achieve the objective. So when things change on the battlefield, the objective is what informs that subordinate commander as approved by the higher commander to allocate the resources necessary, right? So the screen, the western flank of, or established screen, western flank of the division, okay, that's the operation, but the objective is to prevent any more than 3 T-90s, right? So there's going to be a change in the OE, there's going to be a change somewhere, that's the objective, and that the staff and that subordinate unit can respond accordingly. Okay? So that's why we want to use these reconnaissance objectives and these security objectives, because it gives, again, maximum latitude to the subordinate commander to accomplish or achieve the purpose. Okay, we're going to go through this, the security guidance. Go ahead and we'll take our break, and then we'll do a quick run through and get into the PE. Okay, so as we see the brave scout with binos, you know they're just looking for the Porta-John truck, right? They're just like, they're scanning the horizons for Porta-John. That's what they're doing. Yeah, your scouts may know nothing at a CTC, but they will know the Porta-John schedule. They know nothing about the enemy, but they know the Porta-John schedule. Yep, they're good at that.
So the brigade tacos here. They're Porta-Johns. And
well, there's 37 Porta-Johns. Perfect. They won't be able to figure anything out but that. Okay, so let's, we're going to go into, or we're going to transition into the PE. I'm just going to go over the kind of the big themes that we walked through today. The application will be in the PE, where we start to line out and get that descriptive nature of our commander's reconnaissance guidance. We can articulate the type of reconnaissance or security operation we would consider in the scenario. We give the appropriate guidance to that subordinate unit. We have to apply some common sense about the enemy situation and some common sense about the terrain that we're looking at. So why does a commander, these are your discussion questions from your advance sheets. Okay, why would a commander, what's the tactical situation that requires reconnaissance versus security operation? What's going to push the commander one direction or the other? Knowledge of the enemy? What is that over there? Well, maybe not offense, defense. We do typically see a security operation aligned with a defensive op, but not, it doesn't have to be, right? We just kind of depict it in all of our pictures. So what drives the commander's decision about whether they require reconnaissance security?
Fidelity of information on the enemy forces.
Say that again?
The fidelity of information on the enemy forces, like how much do they know? If they've got a greater understanding, then they'll probably move to a more screening operation. If they don't have a greater understanding, they'll go into a reconnaissance.
Okay. We'll break it, so the need to see, right? I need to learn more. I need to see, right? That would drive them or indicate going towards a reconnaissance operation. I need to learn more about the enemy or the terrain, right? So they would then probably be oriented towards a reconnaissance operation, right? So they'd have to obtain information about the enemy or terrain to move forward in planning or in preparation for execution. So that's it, right? Do I need to know, do I have too many gaps here about terrain, about enemy composition, disposition, right? And then the security would be, I need the time and space, right? I'm the protected force, I need the time and space, right? Who knows? I mean, maybe there's a golf tournament, they're out of the loop, who knows? But maybe they need time and space. Maybe the staff was taken for an offsite, like a congratulatory offsite party or something, and they haven't been planning for a couple days. But it is the need for time and space versus the need for information. And that's coming down with the commander's understanding, visualization of the fight, okay? So if I have CCIRs I need answered, and that's my priority, then I'm going to go with reconnaissance, right? If I'm at this point in my planning iteration and I've started some necessary movement, I'm going to need security. So then that's it. It is the need to obtain information versus the need to provide time and space to make their decisions, okay? But we typically see a transition from one to the other. We typically see a transition from a reconnaissance to a security, okay? So the other way to look at it, even if our unit is defending, we would conduct reconnaissance, okay, in sector, okay, in that defensive sector. We would conduct reconnaissance and then transition to a security operation, okay? So no matter how you do it, you're probably going to end up doing both. But what it comes down to for the commander is they need to see, or do they need that time and maneuver space, because maybe they do have a higher level of understanding of the enemy and terrain at that point. So they need the space there. Okay, but the big difference is security operations oriented on the protected force, reconnaissance is enemy, infrastructure, terrain, weather. All right, so then we talked about the types of reconnaissance operations. Okay, zone, area, route, recon, and force, and then special reconnaissance. We can not delete, but don't worry about special reconnaissance. And certainly not in this scenario do you worry about a reconnaissance and force. Okay? So you're going to focus in your PE on the zone, area, and route. Okay, so remember the differences between those and some of the associated tasks. They're lined out on your charts to put into the PE. All right, same thing with the security. So what I'm telling you in the PE, you'll end up with a combination of reconnaissance and security. Okay, you'll end up with you should end up with either a transition from reconnaissance to security, or someone's doing reconnaissance while someone's doing security, and mutual support of each other. Should go either way, but we should end up with some reconnaissance and some security. Transition between the two, however we get there, all right? We talked about screen, early warning, guard, okay? And then when I talked about the cover, I used incorrect terminology. It is no longer to prevent enemy indirect fire. That was my old Cav brain talking, cav-tastically, that is not correct. It is not indirect fire. Doesn't change anything else I said. It just is, we can't prevent enemy indirect fire given the ranges of the enemy's indirect fire systems. Okay, so we're still doctrinally constrained. It could be up to 50, 60 kilometers in doctrine. That's still within the range of enemy artillery or enemy indirect fire. So that is not critical information, but I stand corrected. I'm taking the mea culpa, and we're going to move on, and we're never going to speak of this again. And if this gets out, you guys are all failing this class. If this makes it and doesn't end up on the cutting room floor, you're all getting Fs. Okay, so then we talked about the task organization. We have to consider the task organization. So if we're doing a reconnaissance, transition to security, we have to look at the terrain, enemy threat, and how we task organize. But they're inherently combined arms. Okay? Next discussion question is articulate the guidance. Yes, it's commander's recon guidance, commander's security guidance. Focus, tempo, engagement, disengagement. Okay, that is the framework we'll use. You'll pull it into your practical exercise output. And we'll, again, descriptive in nature. You're going to be required to generate like some CCIRs or some granularity within that, okay? So we'll apply those today. Next discussion question was, at what point in the planning process? Well, reconnaissance security operations are an enabling op by doctrine FN 390, so they are enduring and continuous. But what we brought it down to is really as we move from receipt of mission and we come out of mission analysis, as we're using the MDMP process, that is when we start developing our CCIR, putting the meat on the bones of an information collection plan, and then we're prepared to issue Annex L out to a subordinate reconnaissance security formation. So key answer is they're enduring, and it's an enduring task to do reconnaissance security. But if we're starting fresh, we just got there, we got an op order, we start MA is where we start doing reconnaissance security, okay? So we're hoping that by WARN 02, we've crossed LD with our reconnaissance formation, and they're doing what they need to do to inform that transition of planning into what's step 3 of MDMP? See, I know this stuff. You guys need to know this stuff eventually. So, so co-development. So some of those answers are the information attained, right? That could be some combat critical information that can inform our planning. So they're doing that reconnaissance, and they're getting some information back to the staff to update their running estimates and complete the COAs, okay? And yeah, everybody's going to do that. All right, so kind of that's a review of the discussion questions that we had last night. All right, but at the end of the day, you're going to apply, oh wait, I'll just flip the slide. Okay. Don't worry, we're going to tweak what the exact instructions are about how we're going to break down the teams, okay? I'm debating whether we just have a separate enemy team, and we have 3 teams today. No, you're not feeling it? It's Friday. All right, how many people want to be on a separate enemy team? All right, 3 teams it is. Wow, I'm just a pushover, okay? The thing is, though, the enemy team has to work fast and inform the brigade team. Can we do it? The enemy team has to keep their assessment, understanding the enemy. Okay? I got to give a quick, G2 dump to those brigade teams. That's the problem we may run into here. But you guys want to do it? So we'll do it. The scenario material provided is we have no change really to the scenario material that you're familiar with at this time. Okay, so as I said in the last PE, think about what is the end state of this practical exercise. You have to articulate, okay, some commander's reconnaissance security guidance. You got to be able to talk to me about some of the fundamentals of reconnaissance security and how they apply. You'll be able to describe the type of reconnaissance operation or the type of security operation in the output, right? You got to look at some of the considerations we had in reconnaissance and security and put them in there, right? So we talked about the reconnaissance considerations had a slide, security had a slide. Like, maybe you got to talk to me about a reconnaissance handover. You got to put those things in there from today, okay? And then we talked transition, reconnaissance, security, to do that. Like, what's the transition between reconnaissance and security? What's that look like? Okay, so you've got to pull forward the fundamentals, apply it in the PE. Okay, so think about the end state of what I'm telling you, not the 4 things listed. Think about how I want to receive the information in a coherent manner so that you can get back to me an articulation of the fundamentals. Okay, you can get back to me the type of reconnaissance or security operation and why. Okay, you can get all the appropriate graphic control measures, whether it's a phase line, a contact point, whether it's we want to add a CFL, whether we want to add an NAI, we want to talk about a reconnaissance handover line, we can put those in there as well, okay? If we're doing that, you got to be able to talk to me about any of the management techniques, right? So whether it's queuing, mixing, or redundancy, you just got to articulate it, okay? So that we have to come out with there, okay? And then we're good, right? So those are kind of the big heavy lifts. So they are aligned with the 4 points, but we got to pull the golden thread through from the class today, okay? And put it into application. So we're going to do 3 teams. We sure on that? Nah, it's Friday. Let's just keep it simple. We'll do a binary. Let's do 2 teams. Each team is responsible for understanding themselves and understanding the enemy. The requirement will be you have to crosstalk with your sister brigade to share that analysis and information, okay? You want to come up, you'll each come up with discrete reconnaissance or security guidance, discrete objectives, whether reconnaissance or security objective, and then you'll kind of defend those positions, okay? And you'll defend why you picked that type of reconnaissance security, so on and so forth. Okay, so think about the end of what you got to brief versus going down the line of the 4 things. So frame out what the end state looks like, divide labor, set a time, assign responsibilities, do a plan to plan, and then come up with the output, okay? There is no restriction. If you have access to the one brief and you want to use it, you can use it. I don't mind if you use one brief or Vantage. Just let me know that this analysis came from Vantage or one brief or something. Just caveat it where you got the analysis from, okay? In the future, I would then be going through your prompt engineering and everything else, see how you prompted and what you did to get there, okay? But you're free to use it. Just caveat if you're briefing out that you used it for this. So no restriction on it, just tell me. Okay, so the same teams we had on the defense. And then I like to just leave it up to you guys to fight about who's what brigade. Since you can't seem to get it right. Same teams as last time. But I want you to fight about which brigade you are. So they're 2-1 and you're 2-2?
2-1.
You guys will be 10 minutes into the PE, and then you'll forget what brigade you were, and then we'll start over. All right. Are you guys doing a one brief for real? Is that really happening over there? Are you messing with me? Did you just gaslight me? All right. Well, we'll present the one brief on those screens.
Sir, can you hand a mic to whoever's going to be presenting, and then we can either clip it on the jacket?
Only if they refer to themselves as senior.
We can put an emoji smiley face over their face if that helps.
Can they get picked up on that mic if they just brief from the board?
No.
Yeah.
I thought you were the one being evaluated.
All right.
So you can literally just be holding like this.
All right. Whoever's briefing over here and then one rep over there. Don't worry, I'll make it painless for you. I won't ask 10 questions. All right. So we're doing one brief on this side. You guys seem as surprised as I am, but okay. All right, what brigade did we have over on this side? 1-2. What's unique about 1-2? Okay, what's unique about strikers? They die? Well, what's as we go through, what was that, 405 or 3 or whatever, the Army organization, what unique capability does a striker provide a commander? Maybe some speed, what else?
Transport.
Flat tires.
Let's try to stay on a positive, it's a Friday. Okay, so they have a dismounted capability within the striker formation? Okay, they have some anti-armor capability? A little bit. But they have dismounted. How are they looking on command and control? Yeah, they got radios and stuff, right? Mounted. They got stuff, right? Huh? They could probably make decent coffee, but they do have, as our S6 expert, it's going to contribute to groups learning. Go ahead and say that out loud.
So strikers inherently have a beyond line of sight capability, so they'll have the MSS systems or JXP systems in there that you can talk beyond line of sight. They additionally have a higher power product, so you could reach out farther with your radio systems and potentially engage your commander from where you're at. But it kind of expands your range versus the dismounted communications, which would be about 10% of what you have in the striker.
So like that's a good news story, right? So command and control, they definitely have an advantage. Some dismounted infantry inherent to the formation. Not a lot of mobile protective firepower if we're mounted, but what's that? So we're okay. So there is a unique capability that we should have assessed with that. All right, so let's walk through. What do we get? What do we get in answers? Who's the spokesperson over here? Christian. No. Oh, you want to take it, Nick? All right, attaboy. Oh, you stood up. Nick, go ahead and brief it out for us.
So our problem is trying to prevent the 7152nd down in the south, orientate in the Luzerne Valley. They've got a defensive belt there established, and we've got open terrain that we have to traverse while they can see us the whole time we're coming down south. One of the ways, so just going straight into the reconnaissance, what we're trying to do, we're going to go from a route recon to figure out avenues of approach in for our friendly forces. We're going to transition to an area recon to identify the disposition and composition of that defensive belt. We are establishing 3 NAIs, one west, central, and more east, to identify where those their defensive belt is arrayed. Also, we're going to be prepared to, once following forces transition to the offense, establish a screen orientated east to help guard our flank against, or not a screen, establish a guard east to protect us against the 7151st as the main element of our force transition south to support the offense. What else was I supposed to hit?
Okay, what was the problem? Is that we could be seen, we're observed throughout?
Open terrain.
Open terrain. Can I change the terrain? No. Could I go at night? Could I tunnel?
We can disperse and use a rapid and forceful tempo.
To overcome this problem with how I echelon my forces, I could maybe bring fires early to isolate some of that observation. Maybe I'm shooting over here so I can move over there. Stuff like that. There's ways I can mitigate that terrain or the effects of the terrain, right? The impact of the terrain. What is, I got the 3 NAIs in their linkage to the enemy forces, but what is the objective? What must the commander learn to successfully accomplish the mission? What's the objective? Is it all 3 NAIs? Is it just one is more important than the other? As you said, we're observed, so we get in contact. I have to have this freedom of maneuver. What am I oriented on?
So it's answering PIR about disposition and composition / arraignment of that enemy defensive belt we talked about from the 715. I briefed in, I forgot the unit. 532. In vicinity of Lucerne Valley, but also the arraignment of 715 north in the Fry Mountains. So did they have subsequent battle positions? What do those look like? How will that transition or that moving to subsequent battle positions affect our attack as well as 2-1s?
Okay, I can get down on that. This identification of the subsequent positions, we have to determine what would trigger them to move, and they'll of course be vulnerable. So maybe that commander's worried about the next fight in the subsequent battle positions, right? So maybe my reconnaissance objective is where are those so I can target them. I mean, we're oversimplifying, but the reconnaissance objective is something that would directly, let's just say it informs a course of action, right? So maybe the subsequent or subsequent, however you want to pronounce it, battle positions, okay? So we'll just simplify it there. And then we are going to transition to a
guard, orientated, cover, no, screen. What's the in-between one?
What do you think? Guard? I'm going to go for a guard.
Or screen, you're correct, sir, screen.
I know I am.
Screen, orientated east.
Nick, I'll play your silly game. I can do this all day.
Yeah. Transition the screen east.
I win again. Try again. Oh, I win again. 2 out of 3. All right, so screen. So only a limited amount of security, but we've committed to the attack, right? Okay, because we can't really tie up those capabilities when they should be oriented on them with the main effort, right? We're an enabling op, so we'll never be oriented. I mean, we probably not the main effort. Okay, we got a good laydown on the enemy. I like that we did it as a group and we picked up the red pen together. Squiggle, 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 squiggle. Okay. All right, so duration. Okay, so this is kind of, how is that descriptive? Just because we ran out of time? Yes. Okay, I'll accept that answer.
Yeah, so talking about security guidance, so the focus for once we transition is maneuver space for the protected force, so 2-1, so providing that adequate space to allow them to uncoil and essentially move down to their objectives. We kind of assess it to be short duration, we hope it's short duration, depending on how uncoiling goes, so shorter than 12 hours. And then engagement criteria was 1 vehicle, and disengagement criteria was more than 1 vehicle and or a tank from the tank company.
Because we're just strikers?
Yes.
Oh, that's okay. So as we look at that guidance, though, where we would want to try to articulate it for that security force is, okay, we got the duration and that kind of stuff, but if we're looking at a direction of attack or axis of advance, that is primary as they're in the COA dev, right? So some of our PIRs would answer like, hey, this is actually really cannibalizing terrain. You can't see all these IV lines on the map. You can't fit this type of unit here, and then you'd orient to another maybe axis of advance or direction of attack. So that is part of how you could be descriptive. You know, I need an axis of advance that will support 2 battalions abreast, right? And then the security force commander could figure that out, and as they develop that situation, what will support it, thinking about what the COA could be for the offense, okay? So that would be kind of descriptive. Security focus is, you know, protect this flank of whatever, right? And they know that we're trying to confirm or deny in the reconnaissance effort, direction of attack or axis of advance for the main effort that is this wide or whatever, okay? So that's how you could help orient or provide that objective and focus in a descriptive manner, okay? Good job. All right, and you guys really did it, huh? The following slides were brought to you by One Brief. Okay. Don't worry about going over this problem statement. It's going to be left holding the bag. Okay, I'm going to save us time without going through this problem statement. It's not really a problem. It's considerations of variables, but it doesn't tie back. It's a fair listing of things, but it doesn't give the staff focus. It gives this, 7154, 7151, maybe, but that's not going to, AI failed you on this one. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. Holy moly. Whew. Good job, Agonculator computer. All right, let's, we got our specified task. Isn't that helpful? It's a clean lift. right out of the order. Okay. The implied tasks, okay. Some of these are not implied at our echelon. So you see some of those are not applicable to us. That's at the division, but that's still a fairly accurate portrayal of some of those implied tasks, okay? Counter mobility, obstacles to deny enemy movement along avenue approach 2 and 3. That?
No, that one doesn't seem to fit.
Did we put the right in? I don't know. We're attacking, they're defending, right?
Yep.
Could we still do counter mobility if we're on the offense as part of a reconnaissance security effort?
Yep.
Sure. It's part of a security effort. Okay, time, maneuver space to make a decision. If you have the time to put in obstacles and apply a counter mobility effort, that is absolutely valid. Now, whether that is implied or not, that's up to the commander, the 3, the 2, but it's certainly a valid way to task organize a reconnaissance security operation to put in counter mobility efforts. Okay? So I will accept that as a valid thing for the staff to focus on. Okay, clear. Okay. So what type of reconnaissance operation did we go with?
Reconnaissance operation? Went with an area reconnaissance.
Okay. So if the essential task is clear, which enemy do you have to clear? This is where we come into this zone, the zone versus the area, that interaction relationship with the enemy. So if it's clear is the essential, then it probably is broader, right, versus an area. Or is that a valid essential task of clearing the frontal blocking zone? You just go to the definition of zone and the definition of area and then decide for yourselves.
Zone is clear all forces and area is 5 member 4.
And within your capabilities, right? There's a little caveat there. So doctrinally, we just want to make sure we're aligned. If we mean clear, then we might, by definition, mean zone. Is that fair, or am I just speaking out of doctrinal, you know? So it does say clear, so I guess I got it clear, right? Don't overthink it. What you would do then is limit all of the other requirements. Just because a zone says you have to do everything, you can just delimit it and say, in the guidance, limit some of those things. I'm not worried about infrastructure, I'm not worried about bridges, I'm not worried about whatever, I'm worried about this, 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 and this. Okay? I mean, it feels like we're parsing it a little bit, but it's fine. Doctrinally, the stair step would be clear enemy zone. Okay. I don't actually hate this. This isn't unhelpful for the AI gonculator. Okay. This one actually, you can work with that. That's took you 5 minutes of whatever, a gonculation time. Yeah, not even? Okay, so that is actually a, okay, that's that one actually you can work with that. That's not all invalid. This did all of this for you?
We don't have special forces, so we decided not to do special.
No, yeah, that's valid. Okay. No, yes, yes, yes. Okay, so it feels like you got to do a combination of all three, right?
Correct.
Okay, that's a valid answer. Zone reconnaissance, someone else is doing an area. We're tying it all back to the CCIR and what the commander must learn. That's a, you could have done that in your head probably as quickly as the gonculator, but that's still fair. Okay. Okay. So what we pick here?
We have a screen.
Okay. Why did we choose a screen?
Economy of force.
Economy of force. We can't pull away from the main effort. Same as here, right? Okay. I accept that as well. I mean, that's actually, because you're just using the field grade rucksack worksheet, threw it in the agonculator, it's pretty close to the doctrinal definitions. The outputs are not, it's not doing any analysis, but it's not bad. It's definitely getting you in the ballpark. Okay, and you've talked about this, right? The early warning of an enemy counterattack. You've intuited that from the graphics and the mission statement. Okay. You get validated, though. AI validated your analysis, so you can feel good about that. All right, but that's not horrible. Okay. We type these in?
Yes.
How can I tell? How I can tell? Because at this point in time, I'm perhaps still smarter than AI. At this point in time, I'm still smarter than AI, or it's AI doesn't do this miscapitalization thing. That's all it was. It's the capitalization that cued me in. Yeah. Ooh, we had a forwards passage of lines? We do. Wouldn't that be a significant problem? What? That's a big problem, huh? Forward passage of lines is a huge problem. Setting conditions for a forward passage of lines. All right, that is another enabling, a passage of lines is another enabling op, which is a whole separate class. But a good catch, not germane to today's discussion. Is there anything you'd like to add since you're holding a microphone in your hand?
I feel useless. It's great. No, I mean, that covered everything. We made sure we had a reconnaissance handover line between us and 1-2. So we met and discussed, liaised, if you will, the 7151 enemy on terrain there, making sure that they fell right into the middle of our boundaries. So we made sure that our screen on 7151 would be tied in with each other, enabling us to use economy of force to then conduct an area reconnaissance deep.
Can we, from the material, the scenario material we've been given, can we discern from us to whom does this handover occur? Who do we actually do this reconnaissance handover to?
It can be to adjacent units. It can be to follow-on forces. You're talking about this specific one?
Yeah.
That would be between us and 1-2's reconnaissance effort.
Okay. So you guys could just crosstalk? Huh? Comms are up. We got enough S6s in here. Comms are up. But the handover, the transfer of responsibility. So when we talk about that reconnaissance handover and the transfer of responsibility, it has to be not necessarily rehearsed, but it has to be pretty clear what that criteria is in relation to you, friendly, enemy, terrain, when they pick it up, right?
We have a coordination point. We made sure it was handled.
I'm not doubting that your tactical acumen is beyond reproach. I don't doubt that. I guess what I'm trying to stress with this transfer of responsibility, it has to actually encompass something that you're transferring, and it has to make sense. So we don't just call reconnaissance handover complete. Okay, it actually has to be done, and it has to be within the capability and scheme of maneuver, concept of op for whom is getting that responsibility. So they have to be in position on time, and you're moving out of position and on time, right? So it's a little more nuanced. A reconnaissance handover could take a day or two as units are repositioning and people are coming off the line, off a security operation, maybe getting refit. So it doesn't have to be immediate, as you guys might be imagining. A reconnaissance handover doesn't have to be immediate. It could go over several hours while things get repositioned. Command nodes, maybe one command node comes in, plugs in, and they pick up that fight and they get the handover, they get the contacts, they're hooked up to the laser satellites and all that stuff, but it doesn't have to be immediate. So just as long as we remember a transfer of responsibility isn't immediate, it could take some time, and it's planned for accordingly. Okay, I kind of like, we got any more secret slides on this AI agonculator? Okay. Okay. It absolutely did very well, the AI did very well on the specified implied tasks. It was pretty strong on that. The screening worksheets, not bad. I mean, that's the schoolhouse answer, right? That's what the schoolhouse gave you. Worked pretty good on that one. Okay, so I kind of want to talk through now. Everyone take a breath. Good work on the PEs. We're going to kind of talk through the kind of back to the beginning of the class today. Oh, you have to move to your own seats? Are you not welcome in sitting in someone's seat and they get mad about it? Or?
It's a territorial thing.
Oh, it's a territorial thing? Oh, I would hate to disrupt that. It is it? I mean, you're only going to spend, I don't know what month we're in right now, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, a little bit of June. So you only got like 8 more months together. I suppose we should figure it out by now. Okay, so we just want to kind of review where we started today. And we talked about really the purpose, and we alluded to the historical context of reconnaissance and security and why it matters, right? So it is an enabling task, but it is essential for successful operations, right? So if we are going to look at this, whatever, seize, retain, exploit, whatever's the MDO definition, somewhere in your chart there, right? MDO. It's there, I promise. So if we're looking at seize, retain, and exploit, initiative, reaction time, maneuver space, reconnaissance security as an enabling op is essential to that, okay? So it's the foundational or the purpose of it is to set conditions for successful ops. I mean, that is why it exists, okay? So whether it's physically on the terrain, is it cognitively, informationally, any of the MET-TCI variables, it's to set conditions for a successful op for the higher headquarters, okay? No reconnaissance security operations doing reconnaissance and or security for itself to keep itself well informed about itself. It is doing it for a higher headquarters, okay? So historically we looked at Buford and Stewart, all right? So we know that got us into the discussion of reconnaissance fundamentals and security fundamentals. These are the considerations that you have to apply when you're developing a course of action for reconnaissance security operations. So why I pinged over here on the Stryker group, what can they do? Report all required information rapidly and accurately. Well, they might have an advantage with some of these this command and control suite that they have on board those platforms, right? ABCTs are lagging in their upgrade of some of their C2 infrastructure, right? So Strykers have that on board. So maybe this fundamental we need to consider just for the equipment that they have to report information timely and accurately, or rapidly and accurately, okay? So that's why we've got to look at it in totality of what each formation is, right? Because we said, more often than not, this is an ad hoc formation. It is ad hoc. It will be put together to do reconnaissance security operations like, let's say we do it at the divisional level. Okay? So we looked at Buford. That would be Buford and Stewart together. It would be a Buford. We looked at Buford and Stewart. We saw that Buford did a good job, right? He was the hero, right? He was the one with, remember Sam Elliott, the American treasure, right? He said, I want you to stay to the high ground, keep a clear eye, okay? So he got us all motivated, and he really adhered to all the fundamentals, right? You can go to that little paragraph, the vignette in your 398 readings. It describes how textbook he adhered to the fundamentals of reconnaissance and security, so he was good. Okay, Stewart, on the other hand, was not. He was not oriented on a reconnaissance objective. He was not providing timely and accurate reports. He didn't have, I guess he had complete freedom of maneuver because he was disconnected from the entire fight. So I guess he had maintained his own freedom of maneuver, just not oriented on a reconnaissance objective. Okay, so as long as we know, we've got to give consideration to these reconnaissance and security fundamentals, just like we did with offense and defense when we looked at the characteristics. How we have to consider the characteristics of them. We look at the fundamentals of reconnaissance security. How these two, reconnaissance and security, they are doctrinally linked through the reconnaissance, whether it's performing continuous reconnaissance or ensuring continuous reconnaissance. They are doctrinally linked on that piece, okay, about the reconnaissance efforts involved in both. So we talked about those fundamentals, okay, and why they matter, all right? And then we talked about the types of reconnaissance operations and types of security operations. We just had a little discussion here. Is it a zone? Is it an area? Is it a route? The answer is yes, both and more. Okay. Is it a screen, guard, cover? Okay, I heard the lesson author had a bit of a mix-up on one of the slides there. Might have said something about the cover incorrectly, but I will get with that lesson author after class, and we'll sort this out professionally. So we talked about the types of security operations. Okay, and the same thing. What the time and maneuver space, that is for that headquarters that is making the decision. Okay? So those are the broad brushstrokes there. And then we started talking about commander's role in driving the ops process and understanding, visualizing, describing, directing, leading, assessing. Okay, we are familiar with that construct. And specifically what we tied it into was commander's reconnaissance guidance or security guidance. The components thereof: tempo, focus, engagement criteria, disengagement criteria. Okay, so we know part of how we express the understanding, visualization, description. And then furthermore, the reconnaissance effort and to an extent the security effort is to help enhance understanding, visualization, and description. So it is the commander's expression of those things and those gaps. Okay? So hopefully they give good guidance, right? Focus, enemy, probably not sufficient guidance, right? If they don't tie in what the objective is, they haven't provided that subordinate the necessary information to maneuver his or her formation to do it, to achieve the objective, okay? So we talked about those aspects of reconnaissance security operations. Today we talked about the commander's guidance, okay? And we talked about the reconnaissance management today, about queuing, mixing, redundancy. So as we get these gaps, we start applying some graphic control measures, right? We have NAIs, we have TAIs. We went through that, FIBAs, FLOTs, FIBA, battle handover, which is a fibula. When you put them together, a fibula, right? So we had a fibula, a forward edge battle area, and then the battle handover line. And then we introduced and discussed a little bit about an intelligence handover line and a reconnaissance handover line. And obviously, reconnaissance handover line is pretty discrete to this block of instruction and why it matters. Okay? So one of the discussion questions: why would a commander decide a reconnaissance versus a security? What informs that calculus for a commander? So if they need to know about the enemy, or they need to buy time maneuver space, right? So one, recon's enemy, oriented on the enemy. Security's oriented on myself or my decision space or something that I need to protect. Okay? So that is the simple way on that discussion question number one from your advanced sheet, okay? Tactical mission tasks we introduced today. It's embedded in your security operations and within reconnaissance operations is the counter reconnaissance. So that ability to maintain an offensive capability within reconnaissance or security operations to, what is it they used to say at the, strip the enemy's eyes from them or something ridiculous like that. But something where you can repel, destroy the enemy's reconnaissance efforts on you. Okay, so we do counter reconnaissance. So as part of the operation, whether it's security or reconnaissance operation, so we talked here, we did a zone reconnaissance transition, we got some area reconnaissance, and then we go on some route reconnaissance. The tactical mission task that could be in one of those is counter reconnaissance along a ridge line that dominates this route. So that subordinate unit is part of the route reconnaissance. Maybe a subordinate unit has conduct counter reconnaissance along this IV line that dominates this route. And they'll conduct counter reconnaissance, which is going to find the enemy scouts and kill them. Okay, so they're all going to be embedded or nested with each other. Okay? So let's finish. Where's my closing notes? So one part we've got to, one concept we have to get to is the reconnaissance security and the IC plan. In the initial phases, as we're in MDMP, those are linked intrinsically, right? Staff commander are coming up with gaps. We're going to put it on an IC plan, right? We're going to begin to develop that IC plan for that commander to close those gaps. So that's how these operations are directly tied to decision making. And we reflect it in our ANXL and our information collection plan, okay? So we're going to shape the fight. Reconnaissance and security operations shape the fight, okay? Initially, maybe confirming or denying the enemy's composition disposition. And then as you described in the outputs from your PEs, the transition for the higher headquarters, right? So we have this transition. We do reconnaissance security, find out where the main defensive belt is, where 7151 is, whatever it is, with a level of specificity needed. And then you all describe this transition to provide a security on a flank or something else to enable the higher headquarters main effort to accomplish the mission, right? So that's the role of reconnaissance security to transition, all right? So if we have a dedicated reconnaissance security formation, we should always have a bit of an advantage in how we fight because we have this unit that it's going to transition no matter what, okay? Because it's an enabling op, it's enduring, and you're already planning to transition that unit, okay? And then that's shaping, tempo, okay? So we got the tempo embedded in the guidance, but tempo of the overall operation, okay? So reconnaissance may need to speed up, slow down, based on enemy reaction, based on, who was saying how long will it take them to get uncoiled? Who was saying that? Heard someone was talking about how long it would take the main body to get moving. Depends on the type of main body and, you know, I don't know, 12 hours doesn't feel unfair sometimes. Because there's always someone trying to cut in line, you know? It's always someone who's violating the movement tables like they're going to win. And they jack it all up, right? So, again, tempo as we look at the friendly operation and enemy reactions, okay? So within that, those are kind of the key themes that we covered today. So enabling ops, we introduced some new concepts, right? We introduced the concept of enabling op, reflected on your doc mat. Reconnaissance security, and then we went into the specifics of reconnaissance security. The 7 types of reconnaissance operations. Oh, it's 5? Okay, you are paying attention? All right, so it's 5. Maybe I added some new ones. All right, and the 9 types of security operations? Oh, there's 4 of those, okay. And then how we adhere to the fundamentals of reconnaissance security to inform that. That whenever we're planning these operations, we got to adhere to the fundamentals. Commander's understanding visualization is described through recon security guidance. And then we introduced some new terms today that are specific to reconnaissance security operations, right? Obviously, reconnaissance handover line, counter reconnaissance, how we use NAIs, why we might use an NAI, okay? So beyond that, that's the overview of today's class. Would you like 3, 2, 1 minutes? What? Refresh. It's impossible. You got a quiz? Oh, we're talking about practice. All right, hold on. Everyone confirm and deny the technological things. I'm sorry, it's open. And then the bad part is I could just go open it if it didn't open. So no matter what, it's happening today. Okay. So are we ready on my right? The right side is ready. Are we ready on my left? The left side is ready. Begin.